I'd like to talk a little about reference images and where to get them. I'll caveat the usual way, though, by saying that I'm a novice when it comes to painting, and really in art in general. I don't have any formal training, so any advice I give here mostly comes from some degree of trial and error. So take what I say with a grain of salt, and definitely give more weight to the painting experts and art teachers out there. Back on topic, where to get references. If you're just practicing and not going to sell the paintings or any other commercial use, well, just use whatever you want. As long as you're not profiting from it, paint what makes you happy, and I wouldn't worry too much about the rest of it. I've heard artists call this type of painting a study when you're just practicing and not going to do anything commercial with it. However, if you may have a commercial use, things do get more complicated. I should probably add now another disclaimer. I'm also not an attorney, so obviously I'm not trying to give any legal advice here. But I think the basics are pretty clear. If you stand to make money from your artwork, you can't use something created by someone else without permission or paying to license it, typically. It does get a little more complicated, though, when you start getting into whether it was, quote, a transformative work or a parody or things like that. But when things get sticky like that, I find it's nice to just be safe about it. When I wrote a book a few years ago, if there was anything that was a gray area, I just defaulted automatically to not including it. So let's say you want to find references that you can potentially use for commercial use, and you don't want to pay for them. Well, there are a couple of paths available. One, you can look towards royalty-free image websites. And there are a handful out there, like Unsplash, Pexels, Pixelbay, and so on. The Library of Congress also has a ton of free images available, but my experience is they aren't curated or organized as well as some of the other sites. I use Unsplash quite a bit, mostly because it's the first one that I happened to stumble upon. But they also have some good stuff available, and it's organized pretty well. I also like how clearly Unsplash's licensing and commercial use details are spelled out. I'll pop those details here on screen. Basically, you're free to use their images as the basis of artwork you sell, publish in a book, or whatever creative commercial ideas you might have. Another great option is you can take the photos yourself. If you took the photos, then you also own the rights to them. It's also a good idea to make sure you've got permission from the person in the photo, though. I actually have a model release form on the back of the business cards I made years ago. I'd actually never used them until very recently, which brings us back to the real topic of this video. I've had in the back of my mind that it would be useful to hire somebody to get a bunch of reference photos. As a hobbyist, though, I can't afford a real professional model, but I thought I might be able to pay a relatively small amount to just a regular person in exchange for a bit of their time. So this has been a vague thought for years, but I finally decided to try it. We have a neighborhood Facebook group that's pretty active, so I posted in the group to see if this was of interest to anyone. I provided a lot of detail in the post that I was still an amateur, still learning, and all that stuff, and why I was looking for reference photos, and that I'd want to sell paintings someday. With potential models' comfort and safety in mind, I also proposed meeting whoever it is at our neighborhood park, kind of in the late afternoon when there'd be lots of people around. I ended up with 3 people willing to be portrait models, which was really fortunate, I think, because I wasn't expecting anyone to respond. I told them all up front that I really have no idea what I'm doing, but I had brainstormed some possible ideas with different angles, facial expressions, and things like that. I actually even made a list and printed off the list to hand to everyone. It only took about 10 to 15 minutes for each person, but I ended up with several hundred reference photos from these sessions, which is awesome. It was a really great experience. Although technically they weren't professional models, you really could have fooled me because they were able to make any expression or any pose very easily. It was very impressive. I was specific about how I was going to use these photos. basically sharing just the paintings and not the originals. And for now, it seems that the models didn't want to be credited anywhere. But if any of them ever change their minds, I'm glad to tag them or add their names to anything. Overall, this turned out better than I could have possibly imagined. I've got a ton of references now that I can use in the future, and I know that I can use the resulting paintings to sell and all that fun stuff. My thought is also, if I can improve as a painter over time, I can also use these references for more creative things as the basis for something different rather than just the kind of beginner level thing that I'm trying to do, which is reproduce what I see. So that is it for this one. Definitely glad I finally tried the hiring a model idea. It worked out great. I'm curious if anyone else has similar experiences like this. If so, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. On screen right now, I've got the first 2 paintings from these photo shoot sessions. I should have quite a few more over time, but I'll just go ahead and let these paintings finish out. Thank you for watching.